That's right. You're listening to and watching the Arsenal Review USA podcast and live show, whatever we are. We're the Arsenal Review USA. You can find us at arsenalreviewusa.com. We're in conjunction. That's a new word I've used at the top of the show because it's the first time for everything for Arsenal, apparently. We're in conjunction with Arsenal America and thebigdiag.com. So I know it's been a while since myself and Kyle's here somewhere. Kyle, say hi.
Hello.
Have graced your presence. We were saving it up. We're just waiting for Arsenal to get the losing out of their system. We kept waiting longer and longer to get in touch with everybody, but yeah, they just won't stop. So we figured we'd jump ahead, or into things, insinuate ourselves into things here after 3 straight losses in the Premiership, and have our say. And I don't know. Well, hopefully we can maybe add a little bit of insight or some kind of opinion that you guys I think is worthwhile out there. But I think it's one place to start here. A good place is to say that there is a lot of opinion going on right now about what exactly is wrong with Arsenal and why they've been in funks for sure throughout this season, but you definitely not to this degree. Why it is that all of a sudden the chickens are coming home to roost, so to speak, with their terrible form, and 3 goals in 3 conceded in each of these 3 matches. Um, on paper, I think you would have looked at least 2 of these matches, the Wolves and the Leicester games, and said, that we could lose points. Maybe not lose those games, but lose points. But certainly not the Crystal Palace game at home.
Yeah.
And it seems that I don't know I don't know where exactly to start, but we might as well start there with the Crystal Palace game. It seems like that was a game that maybe the players and Emery himself took for granted, and I guess that's what I'm setting up the billboard for this very poorly, but the discussion points what I alluded to, everyone's talking about is, who's more at fault here? Is it Emery or is it the players? And 3 games lost in a row to the teams that we lost to. I think most people are of the opinion that it's Unai Emery's fault, and it certainly is in some measure. But I just don't know, Kyle, what exactly it is that he's done. Well, I won't say what he's done wrong, but I can't look at any of these any of the ways that his teams have been set up in these 3 games and say that, oh yeah, that's a he did it wrong there. Now maybe the Leicester game they were set up negatively. They played very very conservative.
Right. I mean, they were
defensive.
Yeah, a lot of stats being thrown around in different blogs and things leading up to the have been shown and shared leading up to the red card for Maitland-Niles that Arsenal were being played off the pitch up until that point. Yeah. So the red card really obviously didn't do Arsenal any favors, but up until that point, Arsenal were the second best by some margin at that point in the match, and it was a foregone conclusion. I think that the game was that Leicester were well in control, and of course took even more control when the red card came out. But those sorts of things happen, red card and bad luck, certainly bad officiating in a lot of cases. Those sorts of things tend to happen to teams like Arsenal when they play or set up as poorly as they did against Leicester. But even, I think, going back to the Palace match at home, a very tentative approach, I thought.
Yeah. That for me, just to be clear, that was the most damning, I think. Yeah. If you could say anything about managerial setup, which I think you could in the Palace and probably the Leicester game. That was the most damning, I think, the Crystal Palace game. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, no, I think there's a lot of things in play. I think it's not that we're not used to seeing Arsenal capitulate like they have and go through a stretch of poor form. But it tends to be more so at the beginning of the season or a particular month, kind of in the middle of the season, not the dog days of April and May when, really every single point, every single match really, really means something when you're trying to get back into the Champions League, maybe finish above Spurs. That isn't going to happen now, but that's always been a nice day to celebrate. And, as of late, as the last couple of years have gone by, it's not, not something that we get to celebrate as often as we would like, but it's still something as that rivalry goes that I think is important to Arsenal fans, considering there isn't much else to cheer about. I think there are so many weird things in play here because, one, we're still in the Europa League. So we can actually win that competition and make it to the Champions League again next season. So that still is very much in play. And I wouldn't put it past Arsenal to go on a tear in the Europa League, totally do a complete 180 in form, score boatloads of goals here, to move on in the competition and go on and win that thing. On the flip side, I could see this form creeping in and becoming somewhat of an epidemic within the squad and within the overall top to bottom, of the organization, and see them crash out of the Europa League as well. There's a lot of scenarios in play, but I think what's most frustrating when you look at kind of top to bottom over these, even 4 out of 5, Premier League games lost now for Arsenal, is that when you miss a player like Aaron Ramsey, for example, who I think has been, and if I take a step back, he's gotten a lot of criticism on our show over the years, on other shows and blogs over the years. But when you look at this season in particular, and it could be because
a key player.
He's been absolutely a key player. And it's really weird to say that he's probably been our most consistent player, our most key player, from start to finish here. And he's leaving in the summer on a free to an entirely different league, leaving the country. And we are losing, hopefully, we don't see a similar effect that we saw when we lost Santi Cazorla. I thought, we talked about it more so last year, I think it was, on the podcast, oftentimes referred to Santi Cazorla as kind of the glue that kept the midfield together. And while Ramsey plays wildly out of position oftentimes and is, not quite the box-to-box player that maybe he should be, is more kind of like hanging out in the offensive third, he has been our most dynamic resource in the middle of the pitch this season. And with him missing, that certainly hurt us. But I also think I've seen, plenty of things floating around the internet, around the mismanagement of not only Ramsey, but the mismanagement of another key player like Mesut Ozil. And when you think about mismanagement, it's, if you're referring to something like that, does that mean basically letting him be sick whenever he wants and have fake injuries and, keeping him out for tactical reasons? There's so many weird scenarios when it comes to, picking your best 11. And okay, if the best 11 that you have to put out against, say, a Leicester City is what you put out, fine. And then that's been another issue that you've seen in the squad as well, is, Mustafi is not a good defender. He needs to be sold immediately. He does not live up to, what you would expect the quality to be from an Arsenal defender, or any Premier League defender for that matter, at a top side. However, what other options are there? We've had so many injuries. There is literally no one else to play there at the moment. And all of these scenarios have been stacked on top of one another. And while I agree that, Emery is definitely, partially at fault, if not mostly at fault, for, the lack of fight, the lack of kind of just overall vision of how we wanted to finish this season, you do have to look at the players and say, who was going to take responsibility and put these games on their shoulders a little bit. We shouldn't have to be crying out for a player like Aaron Ramsey, who is leaving this summer, to be in the squad for someone to actually, grow a pair and decide that they want to, make an impact and say, screw these tactics. I'm just going to get the ball at my feet and I'm going to go score a goal. Because as good a season as Lacazette and Aubameyang have, they have been absent in games like this, more often than not, so the offense, they're certainly struggling too. You can't put it all on the defense, even though that's where you certainly start most of these conversations.
Yeah, no, I think that speaks to a lot to some of the problems that are endemic and in just the way Arsenal set, whether it's Emery or the players or whatever, the way it pans out is that a lot of the times it seems like Arsenal's midfield, even with their best players in it, are largely bypassed. I don't know if it's like a game plan of Emery's or what, but it seems like in a lot of these games the midfield is just a non-issue. Unless it's a really cushy opponent where the likes of Xhaka can sit back and just kind of like ping passes long passes wherever he wants. The midfield is very, very, very absent. Unlike when Ramsey's in there, like you said, which has been not that much recently. So it's a weird way that he sets up Emery or the squad or whatever, that it seems to play out where there's very, very little midfield contribution for Arsenal, and that's why I think you see the likes of Lacazette and Aubameyang go missing. Just they're not connected. Again, it is a lot of a little, a little of a lot of things. When it comes to the manager, when it comes to the players, I think we are seeing though that perhaps this is a sign that Emery's constantly adjusting and constantly reactive type approach to games might be wearing on the players. I'm with you. I'm not totally sold on most of these players and how committed they are. Their character, their leadership, all that crap. All those intangibles. I'm not really sold on a lot of them. I think a lot of them are. One way or another, fairly second rate. Even the ones that are good, technically good, like Ozil and Mkhitaryan, I mean, they're worthless when it comes to really digging in and impressing themselves on a game when it's not going their way. They're worthless for that. And I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of them like that throughout the rest of the team. All that being said, though, I do feel like maybe this group of players just isn't really. They just aren't. Emery's really not getting any traction with them by constantly tinkering, because you saw him do that in these 3 games. I mean, we had different formations. We have a lot of it, with personnel. It's because we don't have players healthy, so that's part of it. That's always going to be part of it. But you've seen teams before, Arsenal teams, even bad Arsenal teams, when things aren't going well, they at least go back to a well or the well. What makes them good, and it doesn't seem like this Arsenal team is able to do that. What's their well? What can they go back to? What's their crutch that they can fall back on? And you could say Lacazette and Aubameyang, their offense, their very, very front offense. But even that's disconnected from their midfield most of the time. So, it seems like Emery's just not able yet to really get the players on his side. And maybe that isn't helped by the fact that some of the players are just crap. Some of them have terrible, terrible attitudes about it and really aren't on the team. I mean, Mesut Ozil is not an Arsenal player for all I'm concerned. He's just not, and
Yeah.
neither is Mkhitaryan. Yeah, I watch, we're not going to go, I promise we're not going to go onto an Ozil rant, but I watched players like Mkhitaryan and like Ozil, and I think I told you this, Kyle, like over the weekend. Like it's just like watching a pickup team player. One of those players, you've got your set teams for whatever you play, outdoor, indoor, whatever, and then there's like the pickup player that you pull onto your team if you need extra people for a game or two.
Yeah, they
And like
hang out there for hours at a time,
and
and yeah,
and they're good, and they're good because they're like rink rats. They play a couple games around, find a team that needs players, and they got good touches on the ball. They got good technical ability. What do? They sit up top and they rip shots, and they never play defense. But as long as they're, maybe they're just thankful to be out of the house or something. They just want to spend some time there, like
yeah,
ripping shots off target. That's what they do all day. They never play defense. They never get back, but that's fine. And you watch the body language of Mkhitaryan. I think it was was it the Wolves game? I mean, he just picked one up and for no reason whatsoever, just ripped it, spooned it high and wide. And was just like, meh, okay, And then he did it again. And it's just like this is for these guys is shooting practice. Again, I don't know if that's a reaction to them being frustrated with Emery or the constant changing, but they just get out there and they just want to rip them. And other than that, they can't be bothered to play in a system. They can't be bothered to play with their teammates. They can't be bothered to care. And unfortunately, I feel like I see more than just Mkhitaryan and Ozil doing that. I feel like I see other players doing that. And maybe that's because that's the bar those guys, those high wage earners, set. Um,
yeah,
but but that's just one of that's unfortunately one of the many, many faulty cogs right now that's going wrong with Arsenal. Obviously, the manager's not getting traction with his tactics. He's maybe losing the players, and then the players. A lot of them just couldn't be bothered. So I don't know where this leaves us. A lot of people have been saying that this is going to lead to a huge clear out. I don't see. This is the club that for the last several summers has done jack squat in terms of wholesale changes. I don't see any clear outs happening.
yeah.
I don't know what you see for the summer. I mean, if you see some of these quote unquote problem children being cut away from the club, and Emery maybe like shaping it in his own likeness. I guess that's the other problem. We don't know what Emery's likeness or his image, his preference,
or what
is for the squad.
what
What's his thing?
Yeah, what influence and what power he actually has in building that squad up. I mean, he's not an Arsene Wenger. Arsene Wenger had pretty much entire control over every aspect of the
club.
Right.
Even in the bad years, he still had entire control. So maybe he didn't have like financial resources, but he still had control to do what he wanted.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think Emery has anything like that.
And I think you have to look at the wholesale changes that have happened above Emery at this point as well. And I'm not even entirely clear on who's running what at this point. In the front office of Arsenal, because I don't think anyone really knows what the roles are of some of these new faces. However, when you look at what did Arsenal bring in? Well, they brought in Denis Suarez, who played in 6 matches for a total of 91 minutes in the 4 months that he was with the club.
Is he injured too?
Yeah, he's injured. He's going back to Spain because he just released a farewell note, and he signed off with the term hugs, which I thought was fitting because everyone needs a hug, I think, at this point if you're an Arsenal fan. But yeah, the Arsenal released when he basically said, I've been fighting this injury for a while and I need to go rehab it. I'm done for the year. He released a statement saying goodbye, thanks for having me, sort of thing. And Arsenal basically released, I think, the stats, or someone released the stats on Twitter that he featured in 6 games, all as a substitute. He may have started 1 game, but he must have come off because he only played, all said and done, he only played a total of a match within the 6-match stretch that he featured in. And so when that is your signing, and that's the involvement that a signing has in the month of January, and that's supposed to kind of provide some sort of spark for you for the second half of the season, that obviously is a big problem. And you sign someone like Bernd Leno, who is fantastic. I honestly would argue, based on some of the performances we've seen from him and the way he's kept Arsenal in games and kept the score lower than it could have been, I would say right now he's the best goalkeeper in England, based on the lack of help that he has in front of him. I mean, if you look at some of these other top choice goalkeepers in the Premier League, at least there is some level of competency defensively in front of him.
I would exclude the Wolves game from that, but yes, I know what you're saying. I mean, certainly the competition is lower than it was, with De Gea being absolutely awful lately.
Yeah.
So,
no, that's a fair point, but you have to remember too, when you're asked to do and make some of the saves that he's made and had to kind of come up with or pull out of the hat, if you will, because of the lack of help he gets in front of him. You got to cut the guy a little bit of slack. It's not like the mistakes he makes are self-imposed and just a complete lack of awareness, or
they're not Almunia's mistakes.
Yeah. And so again, the question, like you just asked, Joel, was where I'm not sure where the club goes from here, because you sign a future number 1, a guy who is young, who clearly, for all Petr Cech's, records and the quality that he did, I guess the enhanced quality at that position that we had been craving as Arsenal fans, for some time, he was still kind of on the tail end, wasn't in his prime. I mean, we have a keeper now that is probably, you could argue, is not quite into their prime yet. It really has improved throughout the season, and now he's got a season of English football under his belt, can really hopefully go places. But if you're going to sign one midfielder who plays 90 minutes in the course of 4 months in your January transfer window, and make no mention of your deficiencies defensively, especially away from home, I mean, it's such a weird. Yeah. And I've used weird about 25 times so far in this podcast, but it really is. I mean, you look at the away form for Arsenal, and I know that these last 3 games, or quite a few of these losses here in the last week and a half, are kind of the outlier for that, because we had actually been pretty decent away from home, considering we were 22-6-6 or something on the season up until these losses, and now we have 10 losses in the league. But wholesale changes I think are needed, but
but they're not doable.
It just doesn't work like that way. It's not like
no, and to be fair, it works for very few clubs can actually make wholesale changes. I can see that, but from what we've seen, from what you just described about Arsenal, it doesn't seem like they can make even the bare minimum changes. The bare minimum changes that are necessary. This the only other comparable transfer Arsenal have made to Suarez, I would say, is the Park Chu-young. Was that a January? Was that a January transfer window transfer back in the day? Good old Park Chu-young.
No, I feel like he came in the summer.
Was he in the bargain bin dash of 2010 or 2011, whatever it was, when we got Arteta and was it Mertesacker? We got like everybody and their brother. Ben Ayoun was in there.
Let's check it out here for everyone, live TV.
Anyone who's having nostalgic feelings for
so he was with Arsenal. He was on the Arsenal books for 2011 to 2014. So 3 seasons. He made one. He made one senior appearance. He was signed on August. Yep, he was part of that group. So August 30th, 2011.
He was there for 3 seasons.
Yeah, he made
maybe on loan. Probably on loan.
No, he signed August 30th, 2011. So he was he made his league debut for Arsenal as a substitute 82 minutes in to a 2-1 home defeat to Manchester United on January 22nd, 2012.
Nice. Okay, great.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I guess it could be worse, but no, I mean, that's, it is worse than that. Arsenal. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe we'll think of it or look at it, evaluate it differently when we look on back on the season as a whole and say that, this was on the books and Arsenal just ran out of steam at the end. But I don't know. It still seems, I mean, it doesn't seem, it's a terrible way to play 3 games and to not capitalize on very, very, in your hands, clear opportunities to get back into the top 4. I mean, Arsenal still aren't that far out of the top 4. I think it's beyond them, but they're not that far out of the top 4 because don't forget the other teams vying for the top 4 are equally bad. Maybe Tottenham's the least bad, but certainly Manchester United and Chelsea are terrible, which I think compounds the frustration for Arsenal supporters that we still can't, we had it right in front. We had it right in front of us. We shot ourselves in one foot. We shot ourselves in the other foot, and then we shot ourselves in the head, basically, over these last 3 games. And I don't know where they go from here, other than just kind of whimper out the rest of the season. I mean, obviously, we've got the Europa League coming up, and a lot of people are saying, and I think they're right, that's Arsenal's best chance of getting into the top 4 is just winning the thing. Which would be funny if Arsenal win the Europa League and, like Man U or someone else wins the Champions League. Then they'd vacate the 3rd and 4th spots for, qualification. We'd screw Chelsea over, basically, if we beat them in the Europa League.
Well, and Tottenham. Oh, that'd be great.
Right. That would be the ultimate St. Tottenham's Day.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be crazy if Arsenal, if they finished above us, but nope, sorry, you don't get it. Those spots are gone.
Well, no, I don't think so. If Liverpool were to win the Champions League, that wouldn't matter because they'll finish 2nd, right? Mm-hmm. Anyway, so here I can give a breakdown to everyone. I'm sure look. I mean, it's getting a little confusing because had we won even just 2 games, or taken 2 points from the last 3 losses, we'd be safely into 4th place. Right now, you have Man City on 92 points, 1 above Liverpool, and at this point, everyone has played 36 matches. So top to bottom, 1st to 20th, everyone's played 36 matches. So City has a 1-point lead over Liverpool, who are runaway 1st and 2nd place. Tottenham in 3rd on 70 points with a 29 goal differential. Chelsea is 4th in 68 points with a 21 goal differential. Arsenal right behind on 66 points with 20 goal differential. So there's still some hope there, even though we concede like a, sieve and a sieve. And then United right behind us on 65 points, but with this 13 goal differential. So Arsenal would really have to crap the bed in the last 2 games to lose the goal differential with United. But 2 points behind Chelsea, who, let's see who they play. They play Watford and at Leicester City. So maybe Leicester City can do us a favor on the last match day of the season. Either way, there's the hope in the mathematical chance of Arsenal finishing in the top 4 is not gone completely in the league. But I think at this point, considering our form in the league, the hope does need to be put on the Europa League. And why not? Go win a European trophy. It's not the Champions League, obviously, but it gets us into the Champions League for next year. And if that was the ultimate goal, does it really matter whether we, finish top 4 in the league or do it through the Europa League route? And I would say it doesn't at this point. Let's just get this season over with. And at least maybe we can be positive about the way it ultimately ends.
Right. So we've got Valencia at home, obviously, on Thursday, and then Brighton at home. Yes. Cinco de Mayo, Sunday after that. So yeah, things can, things can get better for Arsenal. Will they? I don't know. Yeah, it's the verdict's still going to be out for a while on Unai Emery. I don't think a lot of people have lost patience with him. I think it's obviously still too early, but he's definitely making people wonder if he even has a thing, like if he even has a system or a style, because he's still tinkering so much and still setting out these teams that look so insecure that I think the worry is that he just doesn't have a thing. Like he's the Tinker Man. He's the Spanish Tinker Man, basically. And he won't get traction, or he won't find his style or his rhythm. Make his imprint on this Arsenal team anytime soon or ever. I think that's the worry that that a lot of people are expressing after a golden opportunity to get into 4th place that he really blew. He and the team, to be fair, but certainly he shoulders a lot of blame for that with especially the way he set up in the Crystal Palace and Leicester games. Crystal Palace a little too, again, like we said, a little too overconfident, especially with that midfield lineup of Elneny and Guendouzi.
Yeah.
And then Leicester, where it's just like we're very, very negative, very, very pessimistic, almost like the worst Jose Mourinho team ever, where we're second or insecure about what we can do, and so we do nothing. So yeah, that's the hot mess that is Arsenal right now. Again, maybe we can find some kind of alter ego in the Europa League. Do we want to predict those?
I think we're way behind on that. I think
we are. We definitely are.
I think I'm a runaway winner. Ultimately, in that.
Okay. But I have Newcastle as the last team or last game we predicted here. So
that sounds about right.
Go behind. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think I had the power outage last time we tried to do a live show a couple weeks ago, and then
that was the kiss of death.
Yeah, this is. Well, I guess since the Rennes game on March 14th. Yeah, we have not made many predictions. So
do you want to go for Valencia?
Yes, I do. So Valencia at home. Does Coughlin and what's his guts, the defender that we sold, that?
Which one?
Why can't I think of? I wanted to say Santos, but it's not Santos. What the heck is the Brazilian defender's name?
Oh, I can see his face. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I don't know.
Yeah,
the one that got in a fight with. Everyone got in a fight with. What's his name? Man, this is just a bad.
Diego Costa. Yeah.
This is just a bad.
Anyway, he plays for him. Yeah. Not that really matters. I was just kind of curious. Let's say 2-1 victory.
All right, I'm gonna say 1-1. But you said 2-1 win. I'm going to say 1-1. And then I'll go ahead for Brighton. Brighton's at home. I think we will win that, but it's going to be like 1-0.
I'll also say 2-1 on that one.
2-1?
Yeah. And we'll likely be back actually next week to have for another podcast after the Brighton match, because we have a light commitment from a tentative commitment from Dan Roebuck, the Arsenal commentator and presenter, to come on for the first time in a while, especially in 2019, to kind of share his thoughts on how things have gone. As someone who sits and has to watch this with his bare eyes, if you will,
his poor abused eyes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, well, no, I mean that's our customary thing. Usually we do that. For an FA Cup, post FA Cup type discussion with Dan. No such luck this year. I guess maybe we could do like a post Europa League final talk with him. At the very, very end. But yeah, it's the lofty heights, the relatively lofty heights of the FA Cup. I don't think are going to be reached this year. Well, those definitely aren't going to be reached this year. But yeah, we'll see what's going on at the end in Cup season here at the end.
Yeah, I think my final thought, and we'll be back obviously before the end of the season here, but the unfortunate realization that I think a lot of fans and commentators and people that care about the club and have followed them for some time is that we've approached the end of another season that we kind of can't wait to be over. And that's sad, because we had been I think we had won 6 of 7 we had kept 6 of 7 clean sheets, I think, leading up to
a little stretch there.
Yeah, leading up to the Everton match. So when the Everton result happened, it kind of kicked off this awful run of form. And then ultimately, when all said and done, through the stretch of 5 games, you can't look back on any decisions that the manager makes that were good ones to help kind of break the slump. They all seemed more kind of chaotic and threw a bit more uncertainty into the lineup or to just how the players approach the match. But then you certainly, like we said at the beginning of the show here, you can't look to any one player in particular over the course of these matches and say, that's how the entire squad should be playing. This is how the game should be approached. And I would really love to see, more than 1, 2, maybe 3 players in the entirety of the Arsenal squad with just a little bit more backbone and the ability to pick the team up and overcome some adversity. Because and when you think about overcoming adversity, losing away from home in a football match is not necessarily, this awful situation that needs a hero or something like that, or some sort of miracle. But in the context of Arsenal football, we could use a miracle right now, and we could use a player or two that decides that enough is enough. And I'm not saying to go out and there defy the wishes of the manager, but especially as a manager isn't always in the locker room. He's not always talking to the players, kind of getting their feelings around how things are going. And not that we would know this information anyway, but somehow I doubt that players that have an influence that a lot of other players respect are having the constant conversations with Unai Emery about, like, this is how the boys are thinking, or this is how they're feeling about this or that. And I think you're kind of seeing that now, that maybe the squad is not as tight and, versed in what the manager wants, but also how they play well together as maybe we thought. And that's showing now in the form. So fingers crossed for the Europa League, especially, but I do think we can get these final 2 games, get 6 points, and we'll hope for Spurs to be Spursy and Chelsea to do their thing as well.
Yeah, that's all we can hope for at this point. And Arsenal to stop doing their thing, I guess, because they're definitely doing their Arsenal thing. Right now. It's not great. Okay, so anyway, we'll leave you with those happy thoughts. We'll get in touch with you. It sounds like on the other side of the Brighton game. Yeah, after the Valencia and Brighton games in some shape or form. So until then, as always, remember, stick in there, hang in there, support the Arsenal, and have a good week.